Yeah, I know Janet is giving me the nod and Jenny's giving me the thumbs up, and it's kind of fun for me to watch from here, but the Indie Council is in session. Welcome, everybody. This is a place for the leading voices from across the industry to gather to talk news, titles, and everything indie. I'm your master of ceremonies, Jill Grote, the Indie Informer, and today, joining the council, we have the D&D veteran, Janet Garcia.
Hello.
Hello, Janet. Do you want to expand on that? You want that to be a
So
mystery?
sure, I can expand it. We did the season finale of Pew Pew Bang, which is a podcast through the MinMax Network. It is an all-women video game podcast that is meant to feel like a slumber party. So it's really chill vibes, evergreen content. Our season finale was doing D&D, which none of us had done except for Sarah. Our DM was Charles Hart from Game Informer,
Mm-hmm.
aka our designated mansplainer, which is a joke that he came up with, which was really funny. As the only guy that was there for like an all women's video game podcast. Yeah, and it was fun. It was really cool just to give it a go and translate those video game skills over into tabletop RPG. They're like pretty transferable, which we talk about at the beginning of the show. We kind of do like an hour of like setting it up, talking about our background, and then we play a campaign. So yeah, definitely encourage people to give it a shot, even if they're skeptical, because I think you might be surprised by how entertaining it is. I know that's how I felt like watching. My first time watching like a full campaign was MinMax's one shot, where it's like, oh, I like these people. Let me see what their campaign is like. And I'm like, oh, this was really fun and entertaining. So, you might surprise yourself, and if you don't, you can just tab out, and that's all good. No harm, no foul. So, yeah,
Yeah.
check that out if you're interested, because I think it's worth your time.
I'll put the link down. But I think basically a good game of D&D, like y'all were saying on the show, it's really about the people who are around you. If you have people of similar interests and similar humor, who are smart people that you like being around, it's very hard to have a bad game of
Yeah.
D&D. Um, so yeah, go check that out. But also joining the council today, jet setter, go-getter, Jenny Wyndham.
Hello. It's good to be
Hello.
here at home and
Yeah,
not traveling.
finally rested and ready to go.
Rested is a subjective word, I feel like, at
Mhm.
this point in time, but yes, I am ready to go.
Yeah. I mean, really, I'm thinking about it, and this is about the first week I've had where I haven't had some sort of like out of town event or some sort of
Mhm.
big gaming something happening. So I'm like, oh, thank goodness. But then I give myself a lot to do. So,
Yeah.
it never slows down here. And because of that, we don't have time for indie news today. We're going to skip right over it because we have some things we need to talk about. We've got debates about what is an indie. That's just going to always be something
Because
that is
evergreen
coming
topic.
up every topic. We've got to dive into the Silksong situation. We didn't have time to give it uh, the time that we needed for it last week, but we're going to talk about it today. And also, Jenny, who was our boots on the ground, is going to talk about Toronto's Games Week and see if it is getting into that gaming event season spot. So we've got a lot to get through. So let's go ahead and jump in with the Xbox showcase for during the Summer Game Fest kind of week. We had a moment, a lot of really fun indie games that were popping up. We talked about them last week, and we were, you know, overjoyed with the games that were shown. But there was a moment when Xbox revealed its ROG Ally um,
ROG
upcoming kind of
Xbox Ally.
Ally, yeah, handheld
That's it.
situation.
There's
Some
no other
people got to
letter
touch
for
it.
it.
Some people got to touch it. When they were there, I didn't get to
I
do
was
that.
one of those.
You were one of those people. Janet
I was
touched
one of
it.
those people.
She
Yeah,
put
I
her
did.
fingers all over it.
I wish we talked about this in literally any other way than the way we currently are, because it sounds really shit. Yeah. Not to get a. Well, I don't want to cut you off. I can talk a little bit
No,
about
go
that
for it.
if
Go,
you're
go, go, go.
interested. Yeah, I was my first time interacting with any ROG Ally. Apparently, something I didn't know is that this is just replacing their current SKU. So any existing ROG Ally, you could consider it to be like not literally this, because it's not like a generational leap, but the same way that like there's a Nintendo Switch and now there's a Nintendo Switch 2, and like the Nintendo Switch is kind of just like quietly sunsetting to the side. Same with ROG Ally's existing hardware. So if you want to play on that handheld or whatever, the only option is going to be the Xbox One, the Xbox branded one, the one linked up with Xbox. So take that for what you will. That just is I was of the mind that it was just like a separate SKU. This is like gonna be their thing. So they have the ROG Xbox Ally, which is the more powerful one. And then the less powerful one is the ROG Xbox Ally S. Why does it not follow the X and S naming convention? I don't know. Why is the name inserted in the middle of the existing name? I do not know. Though I was told I could always email PR and ask. I did not, because I don't think I'm going to get an interesting answer. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, I actually was really impressed by the device. Spent only, 5-ish minutes with it, so I don't want to speak too glowingly or critical, because I would need more time to like give a real in-depth take. But the texture on it kind of has like almost like the rigidy grooves that like a lot of modern controllers have. Like if you think about how like the PS5 controller has like the symbols on it, it's like a little bit more textured than that. The form factor is more akin to a controller. So I haven't actually spent time with this device, but if you think of like the PlayStation Portal, how it's basically a controller but stretched out, it has that, but looks more cohesive than that. I always thought the PlayStation Portal looked kind of doofy. Like it just kind of looks slapped together like a prototype. I think the ROG Xbox Ally looks a lot more cohesive than that. It allegedly handles heat really well. Can't speak to that because didn't put it through its paces to see if it starts heating, but it's supposed to be designed to like really account for that. And frame rate, it was like really strong. I was playing not an indie game, I was playing Gears, the new one of the old one, whatever. And it was like running at like, I don't know, 140 frames a second. So like performance was super strong. And I think ultimately like what this is serving, which for me as a Steam Deck owner, I personally would not just spend the money to get what's basically kind of just like the Steam Deck again. But if I was like new entering the space, well, I still probably would recommend the Steam Deck just because it feels a little bit more versatile. Especially with having stuff like the trackpad. Like this console does not have a trackpad. It doesn't have like a way to sort of integrate mouse control schemes, because what it's pushing for is all controller vibes, all console vibes. Like this is supposed to kind of be, it's kind of billed as the like, if you're a console person and you want PC and games only, like you don't want to kind of think of like the hardware stuff of all of that. Like it's supposed to kind of be an even more streamlined version. I know it's something that people have been critical of the Steam Deck, where it's like, well, sometimes you gotta like mess with it a little bit, or like if you're a little bit more tech savvy, you can really maximize that piece of hardware. But if you're not, you're sort of like stuck Googling stuff, maybe struggling to implement things. Whether or not they deliver on that sort of pitch of like, this is a more simplified Steam Deck and it like is more controller leaning, that kind of remains to be seen. We'll have to like see what that looks like when it's, out there in the wild, and we can really like compare the two and like look at battery life or like look at all of that stuff. It's a little heavier than, I forget if it's only heavier than the Switch 2 or if it's also heavier than the Steam Deck. I will say it carries its weight really well despite being pretty heavy, which I was impressed by. So yeah, like I kind of went into it like with a kind of a negative perception, because I don't know how y'all feel, but I always felt that the ROG Ally was like the whack one of the two. It's like there's iPhone, then there's Android. And yes, of course, I know the Android is actually like very technologically proficient and is better than the iPhone in a lot of ways. But like a lot of us feel that way, right? It's like, oh, there's the thing and then there's the other one. And like it doesn't matter if the other one is even better because you're so like brand bought in on something like the Steam Deck. So I definitely think the ROG Xbox Ally has that going against it. But again, the streamlined of, I think the Xbox integration is probably really exciting for some people. I know if like you know what you're doing, you can get your Steam Deck to do all that anyway. But a lot of people don't know what they're doing, and they just see, oh, I can have Xbox and Steam in one device, and a lot of people are really excited by that proposition, even though on a technical level, the Steam Deck can already do that, but it's not as forward facing, and I think that will kind of go a long way. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Again, silly names, but I'm sure it seems like Xbox is definitely making a pivot to how can I like sort of situate myself next to someone who's already sort of prospering and has like a lot of good gaming vibes to it. So I'm sure this is not the last we'll talk about Xbox, whether it's from a collaboration standpoint, whether it's whatever their new console ends up being. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that.
I think from like an indie standpoint too, it's a very interesting thing to keep an eye on because for so long the Switch was the only sort of indie machine. You could buy a Switch and that would be what you played indies on. And then as soon as Steam Deck pops up, then you get a lot of people actually like, okay, but like Steam has a lot of indies and a lot of indies for a good reason. It's very low barrier to self-publish on the Steam. So then you get a lot of people migrating from the indie space to that Steam Deck because they can play a wider variety of things that are not just locked into the Nintendo ecosystem. So I'm very interested to see because Xbox has been making this very noticeable push into the indie space. They are highlighting and championing. Like we got as many, if not more, indies in the Xbox showcase as the Summer Game Fest showcase. I don't know. Maybe that's just a feeling on my part. I can go back and look. But like the same thing with last year's Summer Game Fest Xbox is where we saw things like Winter Burrow show up for the first time, and Mixtape was for the first time, which a lot of people really loved this summer. So like I think this is another really interesting push, not only for handhelds, because handhelds are getting popular and people are starting to make that kind of their main thing, even in like our spheres, like industry spheres. Is like, what if though I could just be in bed, like that's a really good push. So they are getting involved with that just because maybe that's less intimidating for people, maybe that's a more convenient form factor for people, but also it is kind of more indie friendly thing as well. So I'm interested to see if that is a part of their push, and what happens here. So unless Jenny wants to jump in with thoughts. Okay.
No, not really. I don't have too many on this one.
It's good. It's great. Jenny has a lot of thoughts. We want to clarify. Lots of thoughts going on in here.
Just not about Microsoft or like Xbox's new handheld. I don't know. I think I'm just not the audience for it personally. And I'm really content with my Steam Deck. And I feel like I can utilize the Steam Deck in all the ways that I want to. So I don't have another interest in a handheld unless it offers something significantly different or unique that I can't pass up on.
Yeah.
I pretty much agree with that.
Pretty much, yeah. This is going to be marketed to people who don't already have.
Though I would take one, to be clear, because I think, for testing purposes. But yeah, I don't think it makes sense to own both. Like, there's not. They're literally, other than I guess, actually no. There's like no different. Like, there's no. Again, ostensibly, you can get like Xbox games to run on the Steam Deck. It's just not like the launcher. There's not like a built-in launcher, and that's kind of the only difference that they have. Yeah, what I want someone to make a handheld that I can fit in a purse again. A regular size purse.
Like the 3DS. Someone bring back and upgrade the 3DS, please.
Yeah, and I know Playdate's like, shouting through the bookshelf, like, oh, it's me. That's not how the scene goes in Interstellar. But, Playdate is obviously there. I do think, again, the lack of backlight is really, has really put a damper on my relationship with the Playdate. But also, it is just inherently like a very different thing. Though one of the reasons I want to have a Playdate Renaissance is because I want something that I can have with me that doesn't require its own carry-on to bring with you.
Yeah.
Okay. So transitioning into our particular interest in this, I want to go ahead and sit down and watch some of the initial reveal trailer with y'all, and we can talk about it. So let me get that up on my screen. Boop. There we go. Okay. Are you ready? I'm ready.
Oh, it's gonna have sound or not have? It doesn't need sound.
It should have sound. Little bit of sound.
I will say the dumb gamer in me likes that the bottom of the sticks light up. I'm not gonna lie. I do think that's kind of nice.
I mean, it's so energizing.
The song is giving freebeats.com a little bit. Sorry to the composer. I'm sure they worked hard on it, but sometimes it's not up to the composer. Sometimes the client, maybe the client just kept pushing back on the more interesting tunes. I don't know. Like how it says Xbox inspired controls. Like, you mean like R2? Like, I don't know, like RT instead of R2. Like, I think too the big question with this this handheld as well is what's the price point. They haven't announced that, which does make me nervous. Is she going to be real pricey? Because I do think in this market space where they are pretty much the same kind of console, the price could be a big difference for people who are maybe looking to make the jump to a PC-ified handheld.
Yeah.
And that's the only place I think they can beat Steam Deck in, really. There is also brand recognition. As much as I think, you know, I am critical of the Xbox brand in that they've been kind of, I think, struggling in a lot of avenues. It is still like a very recognizable thing. But yes,
yeah. Just
for
context,
here's the elephant in the room that we.
And for just to finish the pricing convo, before we get into the next longer thread of the conversation, right now the 1 terabyte OLED Steam Deck is $649 USD. So like that's the upper end of if you wanted a Steam Deck or have a Steam Deck, that's probably what you paid. And the lowest end is like $399, so $400 for a 256 gig LCD, which I thought they were phasing out, but I guess not. So yeah, between that too, $400 to $650 range is kind of where the Steam Deck is for context on what we may be able to expect for the ROG Xbox Ally.
Xbox ROG
Xbox ROG
Ally.
Also, it's before we get into Silksong, I have to point out that ROG stands for Republic of Gamers, which is which feels
I actually
really
didn't know that.
Criminal. Yeah, I don't like that.
It is very like aggressive gamer.
Yeah.
I kind
Xbox
of wanted
been working against that for a couple of years now. Where they're like, actually, we don't want to just smell like Monster Energy, and we want some people who don't feel that way to play our consoles.
I do kind of want to take a big highlighter or Sharpie or something and write Frog Ally, because that would be
I think that would be a lot
I would
more
buy
that
it.
would be,
you know,
and it's still the color branding would still work. Like I think that's a really good.
What if it's little like trigger buttons where like tiny little eyeballs and looking over? Come on now, tell me that wouldn't sell.
Genuinely, that would be an innovation that would push me to think about getting it.
Thank you.
We need to bring
someone
back
called me
the concurrent girly pop release, because why is there no? And I'm tired. Don't tell me it's the white one.
No,
because there's nothing girly about the white one. It's just white. No. Like it's just...
So
go ahead, Jill.
I'm a little, I don't like to say the name of this game because I believe that every time we say it, it gets delayed a little bit more. But a couple of things
Team
simultaneously.
Count.
Team Cherry, we love you. Keep doing your thing. As I was watching this, we all sort of expected Silksong to show up at Summer Game Fest. If it was going to show up, it was a credible idea to think it was going to be here. And then the Summer Game Fest showcase itself went by with jokes, with references, which at this point where we are at with the Silksong sort of hype and chaos of people wanting it, like maybe a little less fun now. Like
I have a
I'm
question
kind
about
of
that.
Yeah, go for it, Janet.
I hate to I feel like whenever anyone has expertise or like an enjoyment of a thing, it's like, you know everything about this thing, right? So I'm gonna do that. But Jenny, I'm gonna do it to you, where it's like, you've done PR, right? What is it,
Jenny?
What? Which it's a joke, of course. Like I don't expect you to have the answer on this, but like, to what degree, if any, is Cherry ever in on these jokes? Do you think? Because I feel like from the outside looking in, I'm like, if I was Team Cherry, and if they didn't like approve of that joke or like greenlight it or whatever, I would be like kind of mad at that, because I feel like it's riling people up to like at me on Twitter or Blue Sky or wherever and be like, oh my God, a joke about how your game that you're struggling to get out isn't out. Like, I feel like, is that not, I know like it's still getting the name out, but isn't it bad?
Yeah, well, okay. So here's the tough part, because I think for like, if it's in a script where like the hosts are kind of like reading off the script and sort of riffing on that joke, that's something where I don't think that has been like, that's not something that someone would reach out to Team Cherry explicitly for. It's like if they're showing gameplay like in the Xbox showcase, that's something that definitely Team Cherry would have input on. But yeah, like Jeff Keighley just being like, haha, Silksong, or any other host making that joke, I would guess probably not. Simply because if it's not like footage or any sort of reveal, you're not technically breaking any embargo or doing anything that, isn't appropriate from a like strict
Like a
standpoint in
business
terms of what are
standpoint.
the business standpoint. But I do agree just from a personal standpoint, and I think a general practice is, if you are going to joke about it and it's something that highly anticipated, you have to do a payoff. You have to have some sort of payoff for the audience if you're going to make a joke. Like, I
Yeah.
forget exactly what it was, but that happened, I think, like 2 years ago. There's Jeff Keighley made a joke about a game, and then it ended up being like one of the final reveals. Like, that's cool because
Mhm.
it's a callback and that feels good. But if some like I think games like Silksong and other super hyped games, you have to tread a little bit more carefully. And I think that's more up to the discretion of the show script writers. So, yeah, as a PR person, I would be like, "Ugh, please no."
Right. And because they had done that previously
Yeah.
in that showcase where they like made comments and references that some people who were very excited for things were like, if that's it, I'm writing essentially, like before the show ended. But then they had reveals that made people happy. Good for everybody who loves Resident
Mhm.
Evil.
Mhm.
um, so like I felt set up for something to happen later because that is such a well-known joke. That is such a like touchy kind of subject, a little sore spot. So I'm like, there's no way they're going to make that sort of high level reference without some sort of payoff in the end. And then cut to the next day, or I don't, time doesn't mean anything. That whole
It's
Summer
maybe
Game
like it's
Fest was
actually
like
maybe like 2 days later because
2 days
I think the live
later,
maybe three. The live show happens on either
Friday,
Thursday or Friday, and then
Mhm.
the Xbox stuff was on
on
Sunday.
Sunday.
This Sunday, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we're all sitting here watching the Xbox showcase, and this pops up, and we are like, I'm losing my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is what we were all expecting. This is here. We're ready to go. I did not expect it to be during the like showing off a new
The
platform
new
sort
old
of.
new handhelds that
Yeah. But like whatever, it was, as long as we have it here. Um And then we get to the end and nothing. They don't even comment on it. I think right after this, like Sarah Bond shows up, or like someone that I remember being like, okay, now they're going to say it. This is going to be the moment that they talk about it. Nothing. It's a complete like elephant in the room. I don't know how to interpret my feelings at that moment. I'm like, why would they do this to themselves? Like, I don't know if this is I'm like, maybe it's a like any publicity is good, but I think this was maybe one of the number one things that I was talking to about other people when the show finished was, I can't believe they showed Silksong without any information about. I mean, okay, that's a little ungenerous. They did say Silksong would be on the ROG Xbox Ally when it launches
yeah
sometime in the holiday season, I believe is what
Mhm.
they said.
yeah
They did not clarify whether or not that meant that Silksong was coming out at that time, or if it's gonna come out before, or when that's gonna be announced. Why would they not announce it here? The first questions that come up are like, there has to be some sort of like, it has to be somewhere, and like, it's gonna be a big deal when it's announced. Um, so what were y'all's initial thoughts when you saw this, and how are you kind of thinking about it now that you've had some time to kind of sit on it?
I mean, for me, it was more, I think, at least from my strategy personally, when I'm working through like what are the marketing beats for a game, like what are the ways that we want to set expectations for the audience. I think I personally wouldn't have chosen to participate in any shows because Team Cherry does not need more publicity. They have enough hype, and arguably maybe even too much hype, where expectations are kind of getting over, just like bubbling over in ways that are really hard to control. I don't think they needed a showcase placement. And I think for me, it would have been wiser to try and hold back until there was something solid, just because this is one of those games that has just become its own like force of nature for every showcase. You go into any showcase and the Silksong crowd is there typing it into chat. Um, I think maybe some of the mentality they had behind it was reinforcing, because they have had delays before, obviously. Maybe they were trying to use this as an opportunity to reinforce, like, this is a 2025 game, because they had previously announced 2025, and this was their time to like just get that message for sure, like, hey, we are still coming this year. I could see that as a potential hope that they had in participating in this. But yeah, I still think I wouldn't have done it if I was part of their team choosing the opportunities to participate in. But I could see how they would have maybe thought through and said, hey, this is a good opportunity to reinforce things. As a player, I don't know. I'm at this point where I kind of just like let everything slide off me, like water off a duck's back when it
Water off
comes
a
to this
duck's back.
game. I'm just gonna wait until it's out, and then I'm just gonna be really happy when it's out. And I'm gonna be really excited to play. And I think just in general, managing expectations from a gaming audience can be really tricky, especially a really hardcore and passionate fan base like the one that Team Cherry has. And so I definitely don't envy the decisions they have to make when trying to make sure their game still is somewhat in the news, and like still trying to like make sure that people know the game's still happening, it's still alive, it's not a dead game or getting abandoned, but try and make sure people aren't going overboard anytime they announce any little thing. So it's definite for them, especially. It's a hard line to walk.
Yeah, this is not the first time we have seen an indie that is hugely anticipated and has taken a long time. I don't think Janet over here.
I saw it pop up on like as they was scrolling Reddit, and someone posted, I don't know what subreddit, someone was like, whatever happened to this game? And I was like, don't say this name to me, like, and I took a swig of scotch over my nightstand. Yeah, this I did not enjoy any of the Silksong things from this summer. I thought it was weird. The live show stuff I think was a little punch downy, a little, and I know it's like, oh, it's Deadpool saying it, and Deadpool's like, a little stinker. It's like his personality, but it's like, well, yeah, but you wrote for someone wrote it, and I think that's what's important to keep in mind. It's like, sure, they're writing in the voice of a character, but it's still a real person writing it. And yeah, I think it was just kind of like, I don't see what the benefit of it was. It's not that funny of a joke, just genuinely. Like, the Silksong stuff is very played out to joke about. It's like, what's next? The GTA 6 joke? It's like, come on. Now, I think those jokes are okay when they're maybe in like a context of a more jokey thing. Like, I believe is it the GDC, not the GDC Awards, the DICE Awards are like funky and like, goofy, and they have like whole monologues where it's like, we're going to tell like 15 game industry jokes. The GDC Awards to a degree can be a little bit like jokey depending on who the host is, and that's like, that stuff can fit in the context of maybe other stuff. But when you like are a show that's mostly serious and you have like one joke, and the joke is that some indie studio's game has been delayed a lot, it's like, it is kind of feeling like, what was it, the in The Office, which I'm aging myself, I'm making Office references, but The Office with the Dundies, and it's like, hey, what if you just didn't give Pam the longest engagement award? And he's like, no, you don't understand. Each year Pam doesn't get engaged, the joke gets funnier. And Michael's like a jerk for that. That's what's funny as an audience. It's like, no one thinks that like, that's the joke in that, is that Michael is a jerk, and that also it's like funny in a dark way. And I felt similarly about the Deadpool stuff. With the Xbox integration, it felt like a whack win to me. They're like, we're gonna show Silksong, and then people are gonna be like, ooh, Silksong. And again, it's kind of like Xbox, I think, just with this like whole strategy too, with the whole like ROG Xbox salad, whatever, right? It is kind of giving, hey, what if I write my name on the back of your project a little bit? And I'm not saying that like, obviously there's like, relationships between like publishers and developers and like platform holders and stuff. Like, it can be a symbiotic relationship, but it just felt like they wanted a cheap win, and I felt cheap seeing it. I felt like it cheapened the whole experience a little bit. And yeah, I do think that's kind of like a light negative for Team Cherry. Again, I think they are so like beloved, people are excited about the game, unless they're gonna do something like, wildly. Honestly, I don't even think you could cancel them if they did something like sociologically messed up, which I know is sad to say, but like, people are they're good. They're going to be fine no matter what. Like, you know, jokes can't hurt them, extra delays can't hurt them. But just because you can get away with it doesn't mean that, like, maybe we should as an industry. And I do think, like, I don't know, it felt very, like, just weak. It felt weak. It felt whack. I was like, boo, was I throwing tomatoes? No, but, like, I had them in my bag. I don't know, like, seeing this. I was
It was a little
not a
itchy.
fan. Yeah, and I think too, you know, I saw I was googling around for, you know, comments and articles on this, and Tom Phillips over at IGN had written about, like, an article saying Silksong developer responds to release date confusion, promises launch before holiday, not tied to Xbox handheld arrival. I also do think to that point the rollout was a little messy, a little confusing. Like,
Yeah.
okay, is it gonna be kind of a day and date? And it's like, no, but I can't give you the date. So it just feels it just felt a little messy. I think one of the worst things about any announcement is when you give me not enough, and I do feel like even the Xbox's rollout of this handheld without, like, a price is, like, a bit of a, you know, so it just was kind of like sort of lacked a little bit, I think. But yeah, meanwhile I'm still sitting here like, do I want to try Hollow Knight? I feel like the game's really hard, so I don't know if I want to play it. But the longer Silksong doesn't come out, it feels like I'm wasting my time not having tried Hollow
Right.
Knight.
Maybe
It's
that's
almost
the
embarrassing
one.
to not have played at this point, because it's like, you had a lot of time to
That's the
try this
criteria
game.
they're waiting for, Janet, is like, we're watching if Janet Garcia
Yeah,
It's a
plays
what's the
Hollow
Nexus
whole
event
Knight,
or something.
time?
and
Yeah.
as soon as you do it, that's when they'll release.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I think your point about it, I didn't even really consciously think it, but you saying it made me realize this also what made it feel dissonant to me is it's odd to have, yeah, one product be announced with another product that's also not done. Like, the unfinishedness of it was something that I couldn't quite put into words that you did. So
yeah.
thanks for doing that, because yeah,
Oh,
I
thank you.
definitely felt that too.
Yeah. One of the things I really want to point out here, which I think maybe Xbox was thinking about predominantly and not other things, is that if you look at the screen that's up right now, the tiles that we can see are Silksong, Gears Tactic, Balatro, and Clair Obscure Expedition 33. So very, very prominent indie placement here. So I think there is some argument to make that they are trying to push this as their indie machine and be very indie friendly. So I get if you're Xbox, and like Xbox, however long ago that was the first sort of big look at Silksong that we had at that point. So and that feels like it was a long time ago. So, like, I understand if you're sitting in a room and you're like, okay, we're trying to make this indie push. What indie games are going to make this a big deal? And to sit down and say Silksong makes a lot of sense. And I think perhaps it was just not thought of that it would be pushed back in any way that we're not getting. I mean, even if we had gotten some information about, like, you'll see more news later, or whatever. Like, at the very least,
Something
give
they have
us
anything. They did
right,
get
give
us
us
talking, though.
something.
In their defense, we're talking about it now, and we wouldn't be otherwise. And I
Yeah.
think they knew that. They're
Yeah,
like,
that's the thing.
people are
It's
gonna
like,
have to. You'll be forced to talk about it because it is
yeah,
Silksong.
I think that is, and it kind of goes to, I'm very curious because, I'm sure there were people on the team that flagged, like, hey, these are maybe some of the problems or the things that'll come up if we partner with this game, if we include this game in this section of, our promo. And I'm sure there were other people, obviously they were like, hey, no, the benefits of these conversations are going to outweigh the perhaps frustrations that some people will feel. Because also I'm curious because I'm always wondering about where are the bubbles of people who are, like, in this and they are super dedicated to the Silksong updates and they know what's going on and they're, like, frustrated because they keep seeing delays or they don't know, when it's coming out, versus a wider bubble of people who are probably into Silksong but aren't really paying attention and they're like, "Oh yeah, there's Silksong again." Um it's the same bubble I felt when I was like, "Oh, yeah, I wonder how the Nintendo Switch 2 is maybe gonna do because I don't know, it seems like everyone's, like, kind of down on it, as it's coming out, and then it sells the most copies that any, Switch has sold or something, I forget, it was, like, 3.5 million or something.
Mhm.
So, I am constantly thinking also about the bubbles that we're in versus the bubble of consumers that this showcase is aiming at. And so I'm curious to also see like, oh, maybe outside of the more intense gaming focused communities, people who are maybe a bit more casually interested but still involved in the Xbox ecosystem and into Silksong and Hollow Knight, did they have a similar reaction, or were they just like, cool, that's neat?
Yeah, I'm sleuthing through the I don't think I'm going to find like a concrete answer, but sort of looking at different ends of the spectrum of like casual people and also hardcore people. I'm like, I wonder how the like this what the Silksong sickos think of all this. I don't know if I'll find an answer during this podcast, but I was looking through the r/Silksong and I found this graduation cap that says graduated before Silksong with like a meme face, which is funny. So yeah, I mean, I think too, you've been in that community for so long. Like if you are someone who's like, I am excited for Silksong enough to be like on the subreddit for it, I'm guessing you're probably like, you know, almost part of the joke of it. Not that it's like, you know, but just kind of the like that's now your culture, like waiting and like not getting it, and also just getting like little crumbs and being like, I have these now to share. Kind of almost like when you're, you know, I feel that that way with the LA Galaxy have been terrible this year, and them like doing so badly, and it almost being like memed in the community where we won like our first game ever, like barely like 2 weeks ago, and people were like, the streak starts now, playoffs, here we go. And it's just like, yeah, like you kind of almost, it's like joking about the delusion, you almost buy into it because you know how we speak shapes the way we think also, even if we don't mean, it's like, oh no, it's a joke. It's like, yeah, but you said it, and now it's kind of like you're kind of internalizing it in a way. So I don't know. It's all messy.
I'm really interested in the community of people who are not actually interested in Silksong as a product, but are interested in it as a meme. That continues to be like all of those people who are in chats just being like, where's Silksong? Like, there's a percentage, there's probably a significant percentage of people who just know it as a joke and are not like, I would go so far as to say people actually like some people probably don't know it's a game, but like to just have that joke is what they find interesting. So I'm extremely like curious when Silksong does actually arrive, how much it is received by the public and how it actually sells commercially, because I don't know how many people are actually here as a part of the Silksong community, ready to play this game versus how many people are in it just for the memes. And once the meme goes away by the game actually releasing, are they going to go away as well? Or like Janet was saying, like, because they've joked about it for so long, do they pick it up because they've been a part of that meme for so long? Like, I really want to see how that plays out.
I think the meme people have the money to buy it. Like I think they're gonna pull the but I agree with you. I agree with you that I think a lot of times when you see it in the chat, it's not necessarily like these are the most hardcore Silksong fans. I think it's like how the joke of when you're at a concert, you shout "Play Freebird" at the person on stage. Again, it's kind of a very old meme joke, but it's like that's meant to just be like goofy. Is Freebird a good song? Actually, it is really good. If you haven't heard it in a while, you'd be like, "Oh man, it's better than I remember it." But it's meant to be like hamming it up, and I think that's what people are doing in those chats. Which, like, you know what? Before that, people were just posting a bunch of slurs. So I'll take the Silksong release date. It's one of the more innocuous things for people to dogpile into a chat. But yes, I do think it's definitely been kind of memed to death. It might be the most. I don't know if there's been a more memed about release date indie game. Obviously, Undertale gets a bunch of memes because it's like popular on the internet. But yeah.
I don't know how Janet knew to come at me like that, because I definitely made that joke at the Metallica concert over the weekend.
The Freebird thing,
the Freebird joke.
I find it so funny, but like it definitely is definitely like. I was thinking about it, I'm like, where did I even pick that up? I didn't even get that from the internet. I got that from like people in the world.
Right.
Like the original meme source, just people talking smack around in the world. But yeah, so we'll see.
So do we think Silksong appears like in a showcase before it releases? Do we think its plan is just to drop? Team Cherry just drops it and they're like, we wash our hands of having to deal with this. Do we think it's going to be like in the next Keeley thing is, I think, Gamescom? Did they show up at the 6-1 Indie Showcase? Because that would be amazing. Team Cherry was looking at you.
I'm still of the mind that they will do it at like one of the big showcases, which at this point I'd say a Keeley. Like, what is it? Gamescom Keeley, SGF Keeley, Winter Keeley. I feel like they're going to be at a Keeley. There's definitely a chance they could, like, if like in another universe, if Xbox had done the release day at their showcase, I wouldn't have been like so shocked. Like if one of the big kind of publisher platform holders shows it, but I do think they're like high enough they can kind of go anywhere. And I do think the peak of exposure is still one of Keeley's platforms. There's definitely a chance they Zach and just say, here's the date. Just don't ask us anything. But I think you got it at this point. Why not do it up? Like, it's been so long. I don't know. Like, I hope they do something like that for it, at least.
Yeah. I feel like if they did a showcase, it would probably be Gamescom, because I don't know. I feel like the winter showcase, that's like a little too close to holiday season. And I feel like they'd probably be just ahead of it. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for like an August or September. I don't know why. I have no reasons. I'm just like I feel like hopeful because again, we have Gamescom and like Keeley's opening night live then. And so if we're getting a showcase timing, I feel like somewhere around then is probably the case. There is a part of me, honestly, even though I know I think strategically it wouldn't maximize the opportunity. I think it would be just very funny. I don't know if they're just like, game's out. Here you go. And just like shadow dropped it because if anyone could, it's them. But I agree probably with the amount of everything that's been put in. If they do it properly, it's probably going to be a Keeley fest of some sort, Keeley event of some sort.
Yeah. I think also Gamescom might be our big thing to look at because the Game Awards usually happens kind of second week of December-ish sort of thing, and the ROG Ally is supposed to come out holiday 2025. Usually they didn't really, did they specify, Janet, that it was before holiday or after?
Yeah,
or did they
it was
just
before
say
holiday?
Okay. Because if they just said like it's not going to be at the same time, like maybe they're pushing it to the end of the year, and that's
Yeah, I can grab from again, this was Tom Phillips at IGN.
Shout out to you, Tom
who's
Phillips.
pulling in from the game still Discord, like Silksong's Discord. It says, in a message seen by IGN, Team Cherry marketing manager Matthew Leth Griffin stated that Silksong was not I'm confused by this. Not waiting for the, I'm not sure what the, there's like maybe a typo here. Not waiting for the ROG Ally X to launch, and that the game would arrive before the holidays. Quote, I confirmed before holiday, Griffith wrote. Quote, we are not tied to a console release. And just in case of confusion, when asked which holiday he was referring to, Griffin added Christmas. Yes.
Okay, so 2025.
Yes.
For sure.
December 25th. Then it's like, so by Christmas, do you mean like Christmas Eve, Christmas Day?
Of this year?
Like, I'm Mexican, it's Christmas Eve mostly. We don't really do a lot for the day, but some other people do the day really big. Yeah, so sometime before then that's what they have on the, that's what they have out there in the world is public information.
Okay, but technically, like, the Game Awards would be before December 25th.
I do think that is pretty tight though.
That is really tight. They could
depending
do
on
it.
How much time they gave for reviewers, assuming they're doing a traditional review cycle, which I think they should, because they have like that game's easily gonna get like a 94.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, I'd have to Google around to compare other game. You know, if I was doing my full consulting hat, even though when I consult, I normally play the game, but I can also clock it from just looking at it as someone with eyes and ears in the industry, which I'm sure y'all have that too. I mean, look at Death Stranding too. That thing is like wildly like high, and I'm like, did you guys even like the first one? Like, versus this is like there are people, of course, that don't like Hollow Knight, but there's like 7 of them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like that game is massively critically acclaimed. I'm guessing they're gonna do that same thing again, so the difference won't be that vast. So yeah, they could always have a lead up for that, because I'm thinking with Holiday, and reviewing and people taking off for the holidays, that could be, it's challenging to get up content during that kind of time. But yeah.
I don't know. I don't know
see.
if I'm just cynical about what's happening, but like to have a game which I had in my hands in 2019,
Yeah.
to have still been worked on for this long and not to hear something for a very long time, like it does make me worry as a reviewer that something has been happening behind the scenes, something has been happening in development, which could affect what I would assume the quality of the game would be. Like
They're making
if
it more
this
fun. They made it too fun.
they made it too fun. They had to pull it back. Like we have to wait for Janet. So like that is the only fear I have with the game like coming out, because I would love to say like it's Team Cherry, Hollow Knight was critically acclaimed. That team should be able to make that magic happen again. But for this long, it does make you start to worry about like what is happening behind the scenes that might affect the game itself. Cause it could be like the first half an hour of like y'all remember that meme picture of like the horse that's got like the head that's so super detailed, drawn perfectly, like amazing piece of art. And then the legs and the tail is just like a stick figure because they ran out of time. Like that's always a possibility. Which is why if you're reviewing a game, you should always play to the end because you never know. It could be a.
I will say, to revise for realism, I would put my Metacritic prediction for Silksong at a 92, only because
92.
four is really high to hit. But like the Stranding one had an 82, the Stranding 2 had a 90, Claire Obscure had a 93, which is like kind of unheard of. But yeah, I'd be a little surprised if it's not at least hitting 90, and it's not necessarily because I think the game is going to be that good. I do think, again, there are many variables that go into, I think, what makes like an aggregate score like that, and I do think one of them is like the prestige of what's come before, and kind of it's like that joke of like if you've reviewed enough stuff, people have made that joke of like I could start writing the review for blank game before I even have it, because you kind of both know what to expect, but then also I do think for some critics that might be a challenge against trying to have like that blank slate perspective, which of course we never come in as a blank slate on anything. Like it's like Austin Walker's joke, right? You start playing a game the second you hear about it. It's like in your head it already is certain things, and then you're also kind of, so there's many layers for what, plus there's a self-selection. The people reviewing this are probably going to be exclusively Hollow Knight heads who are going to like have an inherent latch to the gameplay flow in a way that someone that's coming in cold might not have, even for the first one. And again, that can cut both ways. It could make someone maybe more critical if they're taking a deeper look at it, but it can also make them more praising if they're like, well, this is like my thing and it's more of my thing. Yeah. So we'll see.
I would really love to see, I don't know how you could do this in actual reality, but I would love a kind of social experiment where it's like the taste test where you take off all of the branding and stuff and you don't know what it is. And like the super fancy French wine is like, oh, and then it's actually, no, this was $2 truck or whatever.
I know. I wish that we could be like, I swear if, it's not indie, but I'm like, I think if Sackboy's Big Adventure was Mario, it would have been a lot more and I think that game's like a really good game. But yeah, I'm like, but you can't do that. So I wish you could. It'd be an interesting social experiment. Cause I even think of that myself with my own work. I think any critic worth their salt is trying to keep that in mind, because it is hard to like, because you don't go in cold and clean. So you're trying to think of, okay, am I really looking at this like in as clear of an assessment as I can, or am I distracted by the fact that I love, Moo Meadows, like if this was a different racing game, would I be more critic? Yeah, so we'll see. I'm sure they'll be just fine. I say ominously, looking into the camera.
Everything's gonna be good. No zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're trying to go deep into. I'm like, now we should talk about the history of reviewing, but we're not going to do that because we have another debate to get into, which Janet was raring to go with. And I didn't get a chance to give her the airtime for it. So Janet, let's talk about Rematch.
Sure.
People are loving it, by the way. Came out last week. I want to throw out some of the numbers. It says Rematch has officially reached 3 million unique players. That's 11.8 million matches played, 55.6 million goals scored, blah, blah, blah. This is just the beginning. Thanks for being with us in and out of the pitch. So that's a lot of players, 3 million unique players to a game, which I would have said for an indie game. But Janet is on the other side of the debate here. So Janet, if you want to talk about your feelings towards Rematch.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a game, it's definitely a good game. I will admit I'm not as hot on it as I think a lot of people are, but I do think they do a great job capturing like the excitement of what makes soccer fun. Like, and I have to credit that to their design because I'm inherently playing in that game space. So I think it would be easy for me to say, well, it's just fun to score a goal. It's like, yeah, but it's fun in their game. Like they made that, they created the context for that fun to prosper. So shout out to them for that. You know, I think it's again exciting to shoot. A little loud for the trailer. Exciting to shoot. You know, it feels they have something new with like pushing the ball ahead of you while you run to kind of like free up space. Like that's very unique to their game. So shout out to all that. I think it's got some fun style, some generous arcadey controls and feels. But yeah, I would actually I was not planning to bring this game to the table. We were kind of talking about it behind the scenes like last week of like, oh, what are you playing? And I'm like, oh, I wouldn't personally bring Rematch here because it is developed by Slow Clap, who is owned by Kepler Interactive, which I think is kind of like a fun wrinkle in the sense that like for some people, Claire Obscure Expedition 33, they're like, oh, that's not indie, it's funded by Kepler Interactive. And I'm of the mind with like indie doesn't mean you're broke. It can, but it doesn't mean like, you know, them getting funding from Kepler. I don't think that that's just someone getting funding. They still own their studio. While Slow Clap is literally owned by Kepler, so I would not consider them to be indie, though. That doesn't mean that I'm not rooting for them on the sidelines. It just means I'm not necessarily bringing them to the show. But I think that's just kind of where, I mean, we talked about this on our What is an Indie episode. I think among us as a cast, and, you know, we can go and share our perspectives just for refreshing the audience or if they're, you know, they're new to the show. But yeah, I'm of the mind of if you are owned by a company, you are not indie. Everything else, pretty much fair game, like funding, all of that. Like, sure, maybe you're a bougier indie, but I think you're, you know, EA, I count EA Originals as indie because even though they are funded and like I also count publishing. Like, you don't have to self-publish in my mind to be an indie. If EA publishes you, that's all cool. If EA buys you, now to me, that is the distinction for me personally. But yeah, where's everyone else at with this? Has anything changed in the last couple months for your vision on what is an indie title?
So one thing, and I can speak to this a little bit more or add a bit more of a wrinkle to this because I used to work for Kepler. I'm curious because the foundation for Kepler as a business model is that each of the studios owns part of Kepler, so it's more of a co-ownership model rather than a traditional publisher studio model. So the studios that are a part of Kepler all have stakes in the publishing side of things as well. So it's like a little bit of a different structure. And I'm curious, based on your thoughts then, because I believe like Slow Clap is part of that structure. Awaseb is part of that structure. Sandfall, I believe, is part of that structure as well. So they're all kind of like in that co-ownership model. Um, and I'm trying to see because I was looking because I'm like, oh wait, do they have a list of all the studios that are officially part of that and the ones that are maybe like being published but not part of the model because there's like different tiers of involvement that you can have within Kepler because Kepler can do, they call it like Kepler Ghost, where they help you publish but you're not part of that like ownership stake. But I'm curious if the studios have that ownership stake in the publishing side, do you still see that as a similar like, oh, not indie anymore?
I'm not sure. That is a wrinkle because yeah, I actually wasn't familiar with that, so I'm glad that you brought that up. I don't know because I think it's like almost different, but it's still it's kind, you know. And then it's like, well, then yeah, I feel like if you are owned, I mean, I get that like okay, we're owned, but you have a stake in it. I guess do you know offhand like what is that stake?
I don't know if I can share.
I think if you're
technically,
I think if you're
don't, so
like,
I'm not going to just in case.
yeah, no, that's totally fair.
Yeah.
I was gonna add like or disclose, but then I was also
Yeah.
was like, you might also just not have literally analytics at the ready anyway.
Yeah.
I think it is kind of like, I guess I would be curious to know who majority owns like Slow Clap. Is it like, because it's kind of like a weird like almost inverted thing where it's like, oh, we own you, but then you own part of us. And I'm like,
yeah.
well, Slow Clap can, I guess, own whatever they want. Like, yeah. So I don't know. I guess
that,
I'm mixed on this then.
Yeah,
perhaps.
I'm not sure in terms of like the percentages and everything, but at least in terms of like creative decision making, like Slow Clap and the studios that are a part of Kepler get that like say, like they get the say in their studios. They're still independently run. They still can make decisions on their own as a studio without the input of every other studio that's a part of the Kepler sort of co-ownership model. So yeah, I don't know. I keep running into just simple fact that indie is so much bigger, like the industry of indie is so much bigger than it was even 5 years ago, definitely 10 years ago. And I know we don't necessarily need more delineations, like there are things that have not worked, but I do think the way that we talked about even genres, we talked about how genres evolve, we come up with new words to describe them. We have new genres that exist as a result of new things just being created. I wonder at what point will we find that we need an additional delineation for how we designate indie.
Mm-hmm.
It's been interesting too. And then Jill, of course, I want to hear your thoughts on it. But looking at the studios' websites, right? They have, because like again, Sandfall, it's not really as like, it's weird because you can Google like who owns Slow Clap and they're like Kepler Interactive, but Sandfall, like, not that kind of language doesn't come up. I don't know if that's just because it hasn't been surfaced or because they have a different deal with Kepler. But like you go to Sandfall's, which is the studio that made Expedition 33, Sandfall's site, and it says Sandfall is well, actually, I thought it said indie, but maybe it doesn't on one spot. Like some of them, like Slow Clap definitely has like independent game studio in like the page, but then in the description it's kind of like and then Sandfall, I know, has been sort of not, seemingly not in, reading between the lines, right? I think they're not interested in claiming the label, but they also like,
or maybe they're not. I'm like
it.
trying to remember. I'm like, maybe it wasn't Sandfall, maybe it was, I'm blanking on the name because it's just hot. The Flintlock developers, Flintlock.
Yeah, I forget
I'm
offhand too.
blanking.
Yeah, I
But
know. I
yeah,
can like see the
I
name, but
wish Kepler did have a list definitively of like all of the studios, and I'm trying to find it because it's also been a minute since I've been a part. So I'm like, I don't know if any have been
yeah,
added or things like that. I wish I could see all of the studios that were definitively a part of that Kepler group.
yeah.
but what's
Yeah.
funny is when you Google like Sandfall Interactive, like their webpage comes up and the preview says Sandfall Interactive is an independent video game studio focusing on PC, next gen, da 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 da. But then when you click on the actual page, that like language isn't like really there, so it's like maybe they changed, like I don't know if they changed. And I also know from like and I'll try to find articles on this, but I know they've been on record saying that we are in, I forgot how they phrased it, they said like Indian spirit or something. Like they did not, they, again, you read between the lines, they don't want to say that they're indie, but they also don't want to say they're not indie, I think. And I'm guessing from maybe like a PR cover standpoint, they don't want people to they don't want to end up in a Dave the Diver situation where
Yeah,
like people are mad over the association and they take that anger towards the studio. I'm guessing they're like, well, what if we just say we have indie vibes and then no one can really get mad? We kind of just walk away, take our good game and keep going. So yeah, but Jill, where do you land on this? Yeah, what do you
on
think
this
in there?
topic. I didn't
What are you
give that
thinking in
away
your
at all in
funk?
the introduction. I do want to point out that Slow Clap in their like on their website when they talk about like who are we, the first sentence being Slow Clap is an independent video game studio founded in 2015 in Paris. So the studio themselves consider themselves an independent studio. It is hard to argue when the studio itself thinks it's independent, but I think one of the reasons why it is important to have these discussions about what is or is not indie is because we are seeing more and more the bigger publishers, bigger players in the space with a lot of money, kind of exploiting perhaps this space and people's expectations about it, and trying to get a little piece of that indie pie, to the point where it's like, okay, but is it really one of the
You
bigger?
think an ADA originals?
No, EA Originals, I 100% do count as an indie.
You do.
Unraveled
Did that
was
change at
no.
some point?
I think that they don't do that same branding anymore.
I'm
If
gonna go
I'm
back to the tapes of
go
this
back to
guy.
the tapes, go check it
I
out.
feel, maybe I'm
Because
misremembering. I
no,
remember
no,
you being like, if it's published by a big player, that's good for you, honey, but you're not indie.
no, 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 no. If it is directly published, then I don't usually cover it. So like not Spray Paint Simulator, but go play
Oh, Power Wash?
Power Wash Simulator. I don't usually cover because it did seem to be directly funded by EA and not the EA label created specifically to fund indies. I think their next
I think
one
Square, I think is they were
is
but they
Squares.
for Power Wash Simulator.
I think Power Wash Simulator 2 actually is different, and I might be able to cover that, and I can't remember why. Um, I can't remember why. I think they actually went fully independent, but I can't remember if that's correct right off the top of my head. Another weird instance of this is a couple of games that are
They
coming
did
out of.
self-publish for 2, by
There
the
we
way.
go.
I looked at it. That's probably why.
And they've got a cat, and it's great. That was probably because they went independent. Um, Bandai Namco is now getting into the indie space pretty hard. I have been invited to play several of their games over the summer and before. And for each game, I have to kind of assess what kind of part of this is. And like Battle Trains, which I talked about a little bit last week, go check it out. It's a fun game, good strategy game. I played it on my stream. Is a situation where the game itself started in the studio concept. They had it all kind of set out. It was an independent thing. And then Bandai saw it, got interested, and offered money to them. So in my mind, that's a situation where, like, why would I punish an independent developer for being successful? Because, like, they were successful in getting money to be able to not only pay their people and to make a game, I imagine, kind of polish it up a little bit. And why would I punish that? Because if you are the kind of person that says indie games can only be one person in a basement making games, you then limit indie games to the kind of people who can support that, and that tends to be white dudes, like, just to say outright, like someone who can have a money stream or can support themselves in another way, and can
You can say white dudes with girlfriends. It's okay.
white dudes,
just a joke. It's a joke.
Yeah, usually if you're like a marginalized
if you were
person in
gotten by that stray,
games,
you're entitled for financial compensation.
if you're a marginalized person making a game, it is a lot harder to get people's eyes on it, to have those connections you need to get things done, to be able to support yourself doing other things, just because of how capitalistic system usually doesn't work as well for people who are femme facing. So like there's a lot of things that if you or just like wealthy people in general, the people who are wealthy independently are the ones who are able to, like, let me just sit in a basement and not worry and just worry about the art. That's why you see a lot of, like, if you actually look at like art, like painting, like you see a lot of art tours which are like rich white dudes or just dudes in general, because like they have money and they're the second son of some house or something, and they can like afford to sit around and paint all day, and to have that. So like you get a lot of that problem if you cut the thought of money and business out of indie game making. So I don't want to set it to a point where we have to narrow it down to the people who can afford to support themselves. So if you have a game that is suddenly injected with money, I mean, I love, Janet, how you said, like, a game, like indie games don't have to be broke. I know I've talked about this before, but there's like a really memorable interaction I had with somebody who was like, Hades doesn't count as an indie anymore because it's popular. And I'm like, you are conflating the idea of indie with underground, and that's not the same thing, even though they are a lot of the times. Like, there are indies that are like real indie, you know, like super indie project.
Someone's
There
laptop from their
like,
class, like
yeah, but there are like these kind of what I call gray indies where you are getting people who are thinking up their own ideas under their own power with their own vision that they are executing. And sometimes they get money for that along the way, and that's fine. So for me, Slow Clap, again, it's a gray area, obviously, but actually, Jenny, with if you are in that situation with Kepler, let's say the next game from Slow Clap is something completely different. Like, do you have to have that input, or do you just come and say like, hey, this is the game I'm making? Or do you know how that structure works?
I don't know entirely. I know just from when I was there and what I experienced, it did seem, at least from what I got to see, that it was just like, hey, here's what we're working on. Like, what do you all think? And it wasn't a, hey, do you approve of this? It was more like, no, this is the next project that we're really excited about. Maybe there were other conversations that were going to be had, but it seemed like a very much, again, they had that control over what they wanted to create. I also wanted to just bring, because I have been looking through the website and I did end up finding it. Kepler does have like a little bit of a statement as well as the studios that are officially included. And I did misspeak, it wasn't Sandfall, so I want to correct that for sure. They say, as a part of Kepler, studio founders become co-owners with a say in the decision-making process of the collective and are able to utilize the benefits that a model like this can provide: marketing, operations, finance, publishing, technology, and team expertise. The combination of resources enables each studio to achieve their goals while maintaining creative freedom. And the studios include A44, which was the Flintlock team, which I had forgotten, Alpha Channel, Awaseb, Ebb Software, The Gentle Bros, IOI Gamer, which is this, Slow Clap, Timberline, Tactical Adventures, and then one logo, Shape Farm. So those are the studios that are officially part of that group. So Sandfall is published, but not part of the like co-op structure. So there is that. Slow Clap is part of the co-op structure. So they are benefiting from, in addition to like their studios resources, the resources that these other studios can provide, and that collective can provide.
Yeah, I think that I guess it, without knowing, if I had to pick like right now, it's like you can never go back on the statement. I probably would then just allow Kepler to be associated as like, even upon owning being in that indie realm, just because of the co-ownership angle, which is I think very unique to like what Kepler's doing. However, my light hesitance in that is, for me, part of like the ownership, like it's not just like the cloud of like I own it or whatever, or even the freedom of it, because you can be in like a good relationship business wise. Like that's just, I fear that's just called a good business relationship. It's like, if Kepler were to fall, do other places fall with it? And I know someone might be able to argue that, oh, well, that's true of a lot of indie games, even when they're independent. Like we see things like freaking, oh my gosh, the studio making 8 million games every 2 days. What is the studio? I'm blanking out. Zalavier Studio.
Oh,
Strange
Scaffold.
Strange Scaffold. I'm sure. And this is me making up. This is totally speculation. But if they have that deal with another name that you guys are about to say that I can't remember, which is
Frosty Pop.
Frosty Literally, Pop? I was in my head. I'm like, it's just something with ice cream. I don't know. Frosty Pop. Like, I'm sure if Frosty Pop combusted, I'm sure that would negatively impact that studio. So in that sense, you're never necessarily like totally free from being tied up in other things. But I think that's where ownership does kind of reign for me, where it's like, well, if someone could shut you down or impact like your business model, then inherently like it's not indie to me for that. It's also why like sometimes people have partial stakes in studios where it's like, oh, it's 30% owned by like so and so, and I'm like, well, as long as they still have majority ownership, like I still would consider that indie. So yeah, like Kepler, I'd probably would like, I think, allow it, and for the sake of the show, it might make sense just to be like, anything that's, yeah, Kepler's in there, like we don't gotta read the fine print, like just throw it all in there as one thing. I think because it does have that unique co-ownership model. I did also finally find the thing I was looking for with the Clear Obscure Expedition 33 team. It says PC Gamer, but I found the link through like tech.yahoo.com. I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe I'll Google to find a real PC Gamer link because I think it's a PC Gamer story. And the headline is, "We are a small team with an indie spirit. Player Obscure Expedition 33 devs say they won't suck up hundreds of hours of their life as they spill the beans on price." And it's like them mostly talking about price. But yeah, I think it is definitely interesting. Like that, I just think that's like a fascinating phrase. And at the end of the day, like none of this really matters, right? Like buy the games you want to buy, play what you want to play. I doubt that if you're a fan of indie games, like I doubt you're like, oh my god, it's not actually an indie. I can't believe I was playing EA's Unravel or Kepler Interactive's Rematch or whatever. Like it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I think just for the sake of like, I guess our goal in cover scope, figuring out like what does and doesn't fall into that. And Jenny, I think you're right. Like I think I hope as we go on, we actually see more sort of gray models, because I think a gray model like what Kepler has, even though that sounds really negative and shady sounding, like an in between, like, oh, do you own, but like not really, kind of like, I think that stuff can be maybe just beneficial for, like we said, like getting indie studios to have support without like completely conceding the benefits of what freedom allows. But yeah, more often than not, I still see those things as like almost like a good marriage. It's like, well, it's not the same as being single. You just have a partner that treats you well. Like it's just like, like not having someone that's like ruining your life. That's just not being in a bad relationship, and kind of same deal on the business end. But like if you guys want to talk about Rematch, I'm not going to stop you. Take it away. No, I'm just kidding. I know no one's played with me, but but yeah, I think that might fit the bill a little bit. But yeah, I'm sure we'll have other messes to examine. Good problems to have for the studios, at least, because it usually means that they have some type of good support.
Yep. Yeah. And Rematch, good game. Talking about reviews. It's like a 2-second review for you. Good game. As far as I can tell, like I'm not a huge sports game person, but I have played Rematch and it was pretty fun. They had a lot of interesting control set up so that you could do a lot of things and you could do it kind of quickly as you get that muscle memory in there. And it was really thrilling to watch people play it. And that's not usually how I feel about games like this. So good for them. Good for Rematch.
It's soccer's year. We have Despelote also.
Yeah.
It was like, we're getting ready for the World Cup. Don't mix it up with the Club World Cup. That's going on now. Don't worry about it. You don't got to watch that. Just ignore that. The regular World Cup is coming up in North America / South, the CONCACAF area of the side of the globe. So y'all will be primed and ready for it. The gamers will finally be there. Which maybe I don't want them there. I don't know, but I'm gonna be there. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, gamers. Speaking of gamers showing up, let's head over to Toronto for Toronto Games Week. Now
TGW do they call it that, Jenny? I don't know.
No,
TG Dub.
TG Dub. Yeah.
That's going to start being a thing. And that is our question today for Jenny. Is it earning its spot in the gaming events season? Is this going to be the next gotta be there event?
I have a lot of fondness in my heart for, I'm not going to bury the lead. I really enjoy Toronto Games Week. I think, especially after the hecticness, especially of Summer Game Fest and sort of everything this year, with the Switch 2 launch, having this event to go to was so lovely. Like full disclosure, they did fly me out and pay for me to go. I hosted this like workshop, Interactive Ontario, which is like one of the funding entities for studios there, because Canada has a lot of funding for things like the arts, which is great.
Sorry, I thought I was muted.
No, that is like one of the big reasons behind like Red Hook, which is Darkest Dungeon, is they have that Canadian money.
It turns out many countries fund art in their country.
What?
It's incredible. And the city and the area comes together every June. They've done it for a few years now, I think, where they have Toronto Games Week. I guess this year they officially announced during Games Week that now it's Toronto Games Month. So next year, and this year, but I didn't stay for the month, obviously. But next year they're going to have like a full month-long calendar of just games-related things to do around the city. And
that's so cool.
I loved it. I think what's really neat is that this is an event that doesn't compare to an SGF or even like a PAX, simply because there's such a breadth of things to do. And it's really integrated in throughout the city and throughout smaller activities that range from people who are game developers, and you can go to, there's an event called XP Game Summit, which again, that's where I did like a panel and all of that stuff, but that's more for like the biz dev. But they have things like a tea party in the park with Kitten Cup Studios,
Oh,
and you
I'm
can play
down.
Cappy Castaway, which was really cute.
If I
Um,
wasn't already in, Jenny,
yeah.
I do wanna make this argument. This is the official website for the Toronto Games Week. Are you ready for this?
Oh, it's so good.
That's my
Watercolor.
that's my cursor. It just watercolors it and turns on all the colors, and
Yeah,
it
for folks
like
who are just listening, it's a black and white illustration, but as you move your mouse around, it fills in the image with color. It's
Oh my
beautiful.
gosh, it's
Honestly, it
so
looks
amazing.
stunning.
It's like I've
Um,
been doing this for the last 20 minutes, just, like, coloring this. So, like, if there was no other argument, that's really all I need. But
yeah,
continue, Jenny, while
yeah.
I play this.
So I was there primarily for like more of the business side of things. I did the workshop where I talked about like developing your community and social media strategy. And then I did the XP Game Summit, which was just kind of like I listened to pitches, and they had some more internal showcasing of games and demos, all Toronto based or Canadian, I guess. Not everyone's from Toronto. And they also had events around, like, I think they had this one, it was like giant games night where they had this giant projector on the side of a massive building, like city building, and they projected indie games, and you were just
Mhm.
outside enjoying the beautiful spring slash early summer air, eating food, looking at games being projected. They had journaling for game makers where you could go into like a library and have a little journaling session. Just a lot
Oh
of really
my.
cool things across
This
the
sounds so
city.
good.
I
It's
know, right?
amazing. Like,
Do we have
honestly,
no
this is,
class here in the US? I feel like we don't
Like,
have
what's
any, you
I
know
up?
what I
know.
mean?
Journaling? Let's go to a library?
Yeah.
Come
We're
on.
just like
Tea
standing in
parties?
line. We're consuming content, then we leave.
So
You get
it's
drunk at the
not,
bar, you go to sleep, you wake up
yeah,
again, you do it again.
it was just one of the most rejuvenating events I think I've been to. And granted, you're not seeing necessarily the latest and greatest. This is not where you're going for all of the brand new announcements. You're not going to see a ton of super like polished things. Even a lot of these are earlier games, a lot of these are more prototypes or alpha beta builds. But there is just so much charm and heart to the event that I personally would love to go every year. Even if they didn't fly me out, I would love to make an effort to go just because it was just really cool. So if you're in the area, definitely check it out, because this is a relatively new thing. So you can anticipate it for next year. Also, shout out to Pixel Power Play, which was their like Day of the Devs kind of equivalent event where they hosted it in this amazing, like, I think it was like a Red Bull sponsored building, but it's basically this giant media building that they had, kind of like a showcase, kind of like the mix essentially, or a Day of the Devs play days inside. But I will have to say, across from that building was probably the best bakery I think I've been to in a very long time, and had the best croissants. So shout out to that bakery.
Man.
Um, and yeah, it was great. I honestly, if you are in the area, I would highly recommend going. If you know if you're going, please just like go shout out, like go support these devs. And it also made me really wish we had funding and support for things like this in the US and our cities. Cause I'm like, God, wouldn't it be so cool to see that happen just in different areas of, I don't know, the US, which we would
Yeah.
never have the money for. But
I
yeah, it was
think
cool to see.
I think part of the reason why I'm looking at Toronto Games Week, first of all, there were a lot of people that
Mhm.
I look to as very serious people. Some of the shout outs being like um the Finji
Jenny.
developer, yeah, Jenny was there, of course.
You're
The
like a lot of heroes.
Finji
Jenny was also there,
Jen
just
I just
I've
pick up the
made that
crumbs where I
joke
can.
already, Janet, this week. I can't do that joke multiple weeks in a row. Love you, Greg Miller. Um, I where was I? I saw that the Finji
Mhm.
co-founders were there. Finji being the publisher for Tunic and a lot of amazing other games. They're coming out with Unusual June. Um, if it was coming out in June, that would be amazing, but it's not. Um, I saw Asamadorius was there as well, kind of one of the big indie flag wavers. Like if someone's taking this seriously, if he's taking this seriously, this is something to be taken seriously. But I also am looking at the amount of people, and we talked about this a little bit, Janet, of people who didn't go to GDC, people who didn't go to Summer Game Fest, people who are largely international, people in not only our field, but in games in general. So, and a lot of it because they were afraid to literally come into the US. So to have a major event happening in Canada where like we would all have the ability to go fly out and feel safe and feel together and have tea parties, like I'm so down. This might be an event to kind of keep an eye on because like you say, it's fairly new and it has that ability to grow. And I know for a long time people have been talking about how expensive like San Francisco is even before uh, any of the political stuff was going on and before the pandemic happened, like just how difficult it is for people to get into San Francisco and to actually like afford to stay there. Toronto's not like wildly cheaper. Any major city is going to have some problems, but I think it might be an interesting shift that we see just practically speaking for other places to host things. I don't know if tradition will keep those going, but I'm really interested in seeing where Toronto Games Week goes and if it becomes one of these like, okay, if you're looking at the gaming social calendar, you know, you're going first to GDC, then you're going to Summer Game Fest, you're going to PAX, and you're going to this PAX, and you're going to Gamescom and Tokyo Game Show. Like, I'd really love to, because I'm like, realistically, maybe I'll make it out to the Tokyo Game Show sometime in my life. But like, if Toronto Games Week became a very serious contender, and like, say, Team Cherry decides to show up there, you know, like, this is a manageable place that I could arguably get
They'll
to.
have like a hat and a mask on so no one knows it's them because they're like, I just want to enjoy Toronto Games Week. I don't want you
Un-
asking me about
yeah.
Silksong.
Unfortunately, it's all Team Cherry like merch, and they didn't think about it ahead of time. So yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know. I would really love to see it.
I also wasn't familiar with this until, I mean, really just like today. Hopefully that's not too embarrassing of an oversight on my part, but I was like, oh, okay, cool. But I mean, I don't think the vibe, and Jenny, you know, you're a person on the ground that can speak to this really. I don't get the sense that it'll necessarily be like competing in those ways. This seems like kind of just like a different thing. But that's kind of what's appealing to me about it. Like this idea of, I think there is nothing wrong, and you know, to degrees, like all of us have like built our careers on like going to play a game and telling an audience about it. And sometimes these are like games they couldn't have played, games they haven't had time to play, like sourcing games they missed when they were at whatever, right? And like obviously it sounds like to a degree that can happen here too, even though like the stuff is early. Like, you know, the most indie thing you can do is find something years and years and years before it ever like really hits where it's like, oh yeah, I remember seeing someone show this one time at a thing, like, and that's super fun. I love that part of the job as well. But what excites me about looking at this event, like looking at the schedule they had for this past year, like the one that you went to, Jenny, is just that it sounds nice. Like it's like, oh, a couple hours of like different events every day. They're all very like crafty and cozy and like hippy dippy and artsy, and like I really like that kind of stuff. And I feel like this could be a fun event to like, sure, maybe I wouldn't, especially if I'm just paying out of pocket, hit it up every year because it's still, you know, in farther flight, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, less maybe shareable in terms of like what I normally kind of cover kind of things. But I think this sounds like a great event for just like bolstering and rejuvenating your love of games. Like I feel like, not that I ever really fully need that, but I don't need that because I keep filling that cup. And this sounds like a great way to be like, to go and like there's almost like that meme, right, that I almost forgot this is what it was all about. Like it's like, yeah, like okay, you know, that's what I liked about back when I was in Chicago, we had an event called Bit Bash, which definitely is more game station facing than maybe like Toronto Games Week even is, but it's still like also like part, you know, if you've been to the Day of the Devs event where they have like the funky section of like the weird art games that are like physical. Bit Bash has a lot of like experimental stuff like that. And that stuff's good just for like seeing what funky things people can come up with, talking to the people that make those games in a way that's more chill than like at PAX. You can talk to developers as well, but like they are usually like on kind of a tight schedule. They've been working the entire day. They've been like stressing hard over a build. Not that other people aren't, attempting those things, showing off their game here if they are showing their game, but like it's a different vibe. It's less of a like turnstile vibe to games. And I think that like that sounds really great. Like a great way to like the best way to get out of a rut is to never get into one. And like something like Toronto Games Week sounds like, yeah, like I could go. And then you can have that whole thing where like I love when you like visit somewhere and you're there and you're like, wow, like living here would be cool. And it's like, that's not fully true. It's just you like being on vacation. And then you're like, like in reality, right? Like when I'm here in LA, it's like I'm getting like coffee and drinks at the JW every night. It's just like, I just do that with you guys because it's like a work event. But yeah, like this sounds really, really cool. Like I'm going to look into this because it just sounds like a nice, like, again, it wouldn't fully be a vacation because it is still content-y, but like it seems cool and different in a way that's really exciting. So I think we need that in the hustle and bustle of the like, networking at GDC. This cost you $8 million. You better learn something. I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying really hard. I'm really thankful. Like, yeah, this seems like a change of pace from that. So that sounds cool.
Yeah. I think what I really appreciated was it did feel like it had something for everyone. Like the summits and the panels, like there were some talks I went to that were like quality, honestly, GDC worthy panels and talks. And I learned some stuff through them. They were really cool. And they have stuff, and they, in the schedule, what I love that they did is they tagged them. So it's like, here are the things for like game developers, if you're more on the dev side, if you're just curious about games and you just want to come and like hang out and do something fun because you just see that there's an event happening in your city, here's a thing that you can do. Here's something that's a bit more academic or more crafty. So it really was just like, hey, let's all just appreciate this medium in a really in real spaces, which is always really cool. Like not just on a screen. And how can we incorporate this in as many ways as possible so as many people can get excited about games? And so, yeah, it's different, it's refreshing, and I'm very excited to see how it grows. And I hope it continues to grow and they continue to get all that support so it gets bigger every year, because it was so nice.
I would also like to point out, very important point for me, the flight to Boston, which is where PAX East takes place, from San Francisco is 6 hours and 9 minutes. The flight from San Francisco to Toronto is 5 hours and 40 minutes. So significantly less airtime. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
And the public transportation there is great, like easy from the airport into the main downtown area. Like, gotta love it when the public transportation is easy. It's a good,
Yeah, we
like,
don't need
I found it.
to rub salt in the wound, Jenny.
Yeah. Again, one of the things is like if I can find a really good bakery and like a really good croissant in a place, that for me is golden, right?
Okay,
Because
next
I'm very
year.
particular about it. So
Next
that
year,
fills
the
me.
Indie Council needs to be at that bakery one way or another, you know?
Yes.
That's all I'm
I know.
saying. In the comments, let us know if you'd be down for that. I know you will be, because I
Oh my
know you're
gosh.
all
Bakery
people of good taste.
meetup.
So let's move on to games we've been playing. We've talked all the things we need to talk about. So let's just talk about what we've been playing. Janet, you have been playing Squeak Russ Home Squeak Home, and I'm so upset that I have not gotten to this yet. So I'm really excited for you to tell me all about it. So what is going on with Squeak Russ? I can't say this name, but
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
also add like an extra C in there when I read it. I feel like, yeah, Squeak Cross, Home Squeak Home. This was genuinely like straight up one of my most anticipated games, like for a while. I think I first saw it, again, last year at I think Wholesome was sort of at least where I caught wind of it. Shouts at Jenny doing the Wholesome Direct stuff, and then this year it was revealed as like I think Out Now. I think was the reveal, if I'm remembering that right. So it took me a while to get to it since it was kind of right in the midst of SGF stuff. But yeah, if you like Picross, this is a must play. Like no doubt about it. Even if you're not interested in the home design aspect, which I'll explain more of the setup in a bit, but those things are like totally optional. So it's like great because it has just great pick cross puzzles, and if you want or are drawn to the idea of having more, it provides that, which is kind of what drew me in. Like I'm someone who's played some Picross on like the Nintendo Switch, but I don't even know if I've fully finished the Picross game. I liked it. It's just kind of like, okay, whatever. And then I wasn't like I remember trying out like Murder by Numbers, but I wasn't like really as into the narrative in that game. That was kind of its pitch. Like, it's not just Picross, it's like a visual novel mystery stuff. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't really like love that component of the game. So I've sort of, I think we've seen a lot of people do this kind of thing. And when I first saw this, I was like, hold on, they might have something here. So the pitch is that you're this little like mouse or rat, and when you solve puzzles in like little Picross puzzles, you get a piece of furniture for the rat in his little home. That's the pitch. And I said, no one's ever thought of something so bold and brave before. Like I love decorating spaces in games. I love cutesy stuff in games. Something that really impressed me just out the gate. Again, I think so often many great games can exist in different ways, right? Like having a game that's super feature rich does not mean it's inherently like not as, in depth as other games. But I definitely think when you're going kind of narrow scope, it's important to delve deep. And right from starting this game, you have like a rat character creator, and it's like wildly detailed. They're like, okay, what's the rat's name? Like, what's the color of the fur? What's the pattern? How big are the ears? Like, what kind of nose does he have? And I'm like, I didn't even know I wanted to create. I wasn't expecting to create a rat when I started this game. I just thought we'd start off. But I'm like, oh, like what a great attention to detail. Like the UI and like the sound design for it is really nice. Even down to like the puzzles themselves. Like when you're the block that you like fill in for like, this is like how, where the answer goes is cheese. And I'm like, yeah, that makes so much sense. Of course it would be cheese. And like stuff like that goes a long way to, I think, just like enjoying and resting in the details of a game, which so often, I would probably still label this in kind of like that cozy game umbrella genre, and it's just like a puzzle game specifically is like the, Picross puzzle game. But it having those, like that's where the real juice is in styles of this game that I feel like people sometimes don't always clock or remember to like take note of. But yeah, it's super pleasant. I think like a lot of good Picross games, it has great settings options for if you want more or less assistance. I left them on the default, which is like if you mess up one of the rows, they're like, I think this is wrong. And you're like, oop. And then, you go and change it. And it's got the little, like, you can mark the maybes or the X's. I think most people know what, like, also, this is a kind of I'm showing my own, like, lack of background in this type of puzzle. Is the game itself, is there, like, is it just still Picross, like, that puzzle? Or is there, like, a more generic, is this, like, a Kleenex situation where it's, like, I'm saying Kleenex, but really it's a tissue? You know what I mean? Like, is it just called Picross?
I think
or is Picross just the name of that game?
A nonogram.
It's a nonogram, like
yes. Yeah, I think that's the overarching kind of name. And then Picross is under the umbrella.
Yeah, and Picross is kind of put nonograms on the video game map, I guess. Yeah, and I guess for anyone who maybe doesn't know, which I think most people at this point probably do know, but at one point I had to learn what a nonogram / what Picross is. Some would argue that point's still happening now based on me not remembering that's called a nonogram. You have a grid of varying sizes. An easy one might be like a 5x5, 15x15. And almost like, to me, nonogram puzzles are like Sudoku if it felt kind of chiller. I find it a lot, because it's not as numerical based. It's like you have numbers and then you fill in a grid with like shapes. It feels a little bit more easy for me to wrap my head around, but you might have something like, and I'm making it up, so it's not going to be like correct, but it's like you have a 5x5 and it says like one of them says 5. Okay, that means you fill in 5 in that row. And then, another one might say like 1, 3. And it's like, okay, well, you have to have 1 and you have to have 3. How far apart is it? Again, since the 5x5 is kind of easy. But like, it's like, how far apart is it? And you're sort of process of elimination, puzzling out like the order of things. And you can kind of take little notes within it by putting X's for like, okay, I know nothing else can be here. Or you can put little circles for, oh, maybe stuff can be here, where you kind of start to figure it out. And I'm sure people that are like Shio over at Remap seems very skilled at nonograms, and they were like, oh, I was playing this nonogram game where I'm knocking them out in like 15 seconds. I'm in there and I'm like, we hitting like 10 minutes on average on like things where I'm like going step by step. But I think this type of puzzle is like very achievable across like a range of, I think, skill sets for these types of puzzles. So yeah, definitely I recommend trying it out if you haven't already. And I think this is like a totally appropriate one to, even if it's your first like nonogram / like Picross game. Like, I think I frankly skipped the tutorials because I did already know how to play, but like, so I can't speak to that aspect, but it feels very like achievable. There's like lots of different sizes of like the furniture pieces. And yeah, like I said, each puzzle you solve, you get a piece of furniture. You can redo them at a harder like puzzle version to get like different colors. So it's just like a nice way to like get a little more out of solving those puzzles, and you have like more to show for it. While like in Picross, all you get is like a picture. It's like you solve it and they're like, it was an apple, and you're like, cool. And if you're familiar with stuff like Stitch, like Stitch kind of almost has like similar cozy juice to it, where you're like, I solve it and it's like, I know it's a frog, then you see it and you're like, look at my frog. Like it kind of has that like nice celebration of like, look at this thing I made. But yeah,
My
Squeakcross is the
frog
thing
ally.
I'm hitting it up like pretty much every night. I'm trying to play this game. Really, really good stuff. So yeah.
I love that Janet and I are kind of on a similar vibe this week, because the game that I really wanted to talk about today is similarly kind of very cozy, and it is Cast and Chill.
Yes.
Came out last week as well. And one of the big reasons why I really want to shout this game out is because we had a lovely impressions piece of it go up on the website last Friday by the one and only Nicole Carpenter, the first time, the debut on the Indie Informer, which was a lot of fun and really, really cool to see. But the problem when you have a fantastic writer like Nicole Carpenter writing about a game is that you have to play the game once you read the impression. So beware, because the biggest pitch in that impressions piece is not only this is a nice game to play, but it is in part a kind of idle game as well. So you can actively play this game and you can go fishing and you collect the fish. And as you collect the fish, you sell them for better gear. And it is that kind of loop of like, get more gear, be able to get to new locations, to get more fish, to get more gear, and so on and so forth. The really nice thing about this and the angle that was in Nicole's impressions piece is that it makes for a fantastic, like writer background. So if you happen to be writing a big project like I am this week, just having something that is sounds of water and nature and like gentle music in the background, but at the same time, your person is kind of fishing for you and they're not going to be optimal, but they are making money as you're doing this. So when you take a break to kind of like, oh man, I can't work on this, this paragraph one more second, I'm going to throw myself out the window. Then you look over and you see your cute dog companion and you fishing on the lake and how much money you've made. And it's like, okay, cool. Let me go back to the shop and grab
Life
things.
is worth living.
Yeah, exactly. And you immediately get that lovely, like, breath of fresh air, and then you can go back to doing what you're doing. So it is a really good game for that. So it is chill not only if you choose to play it actively the whole time, that's 100% this game can be played that way. But it is a really, really lovely idle kind of wallpaper to have on your computer screen, and to kind of feel like you've been accomplishing things as well. So don't pass it up because it is a really, really, it's first of all really beautiful. We did see this at the 6-1 Indie Showcase. The water is just so well rendered and you just kind of want to be in it and you just want to, like, all of the backgrounds are so thoughtful and I'm like, I want to explore what's going on here. And yeah, a lot of love was put into it, very obviously. So Cast and Chill, y'all should go check that out if you get the
I'm
chance.
grabbing my security code for my credit card now because couldn't remember. I've talked about this before, but I have I do most of my like work and or all my work and writing I do like on Mac pretty much. Like even when I'm at my computer, so I have to like when it comes to these kinds of games, I'm like, well, does it have like a Mac part? And this does have a Mac part, so I'm like, okay, and I can do it through Windows too, but then I have to like have OBS open like as a window. It's like kind of ruins the vibes of like the kind of idle fun of these games. But yeah, the Mac thing has me totally sold, so I'm buying it now so that I can
Mhm.
have double productiveness of like I'm
Have it
working
on in the
and I'm
background.
fishing. Nothing can stop me. But yeah, it was really fun.
Ah,
Yeah,
um,
I played this demo and it is I'm not a fishing game person, but when I got sent the key, I was like, "All right, I will give it a try because it looks really beautiful." And this is probably one of the most relaxing games I think I've ever played. It's so
mhm,
nice.
mhm. No, it legitimately is. It's so good. Go check it out if you get a chance. Um, Jenny, what else have you been playing this week?
Yeah, I'm kind of mostly in that similar cozy-ish vein, a little bit on the darker side, a little like sprinkle of darkness.
Mhm,
I'll
that's what
start
we
with
like.
yeah, I'll start with the sort of the lightest, I guess, with least darkness, and that's Town to City. I just played the demo. It doesn't have a official release date, but the demo's still out if anyone wants to give it a try. And it's by Galaxy Grove, and Quali is the publisher. This is the formula is simple. You are building what starts as a town by a railroad. It eventually grows into a city based on the buildings you put in, the families you move in, and how much you decorate it and make the world a beautiful place. I am it's getting harder and harder to sell me on these building games because I feel like we have had a fair amount of them lately, but I
Mhm,
think this one had this really great bridge between realism and sort of the voxel art. It allowed for a really interesting amount of freedom and creativity where it's not on a grid when you're creating the paths. It was similar to Tiny Glade where you can create these really nice curved paths. Um, and the buildings, you can customize the color and you can add decor on the buildings as well as around them. So I found that it was much more flexible than I initially thought it was going to be. And that felt really good to play. And I loved that they had pretty manageable goals, at least in the demo, where I felt like there was always something specific for me to do if I wanted to, but I could still kind of run with whatever I was most interested in if I didn't want to expand my town's like sort of size status, which I appreciate. Because again, my biggest struggle in these kind of games often is being given too much freedom and then feeling at a loss of what to do. And then I stop because I don't feel creative enough to make something beautiful. So it offered like that good balance of structure and freedom.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
really solid demo.
this is the developer that did Station to Station, if anybody played that a
Mhm,
while back. Very similar, look to it.
mhm.
So yeah, I have no doubt believing that this is gonna be a really relaxing, chill experience.
Yeah, very, very good demo. Highly recommend. I'm excited for the full game. Um, the other, I played a lot of demos lately. These are just kind of like the highlights. Strange Antiquities was the next demo that I played, developed by Bad Viking, published by Iceberg Interactive, I'm pretty sure. And
Iceberg
this
Interactive, you got it.
Oh, yes. For folks who played Strange Horticulture, this is the sequel. So, if you haven't, this is a game where you are the sort of manager or shop tender of a antique shop, and this is a shop that deals in magical relics and items, and so everything has a little bit of a mystery behind it. And every day someone will come to the shop, or a few people will come to the shop. You help address their concerns by giving them the item that fits what they need and send them on their way. That's like the main story. On top of that, there is a mystery that you're going to solve through just escape room style puzzles that you can get by digging around the counters of your space and by exploring the town's map. What's really interesting is the UI of this game. I loved it in Strange Horticulture. I love it in this one, where you have the perspective of someone behind the counter, almost as if you were like first person. But 2D illustrative style, where you can see your counters sort of on the sides. The customer is right in front of you, and then you see your countertop and the cabinets kind of in front of where your waist level would be. And you click around. Each scene is kind of like an escape room sort of like scene, so you're not actually walking around first person. And the actual mechanic or the loop that you go through is you're just collecting items, categorizing them, and yeah, determining which ones to give. And the best part is the categorization process where you're labeling the items, you're looking through the books that you get. Um, and the lore that you can unlock by solving puzzles to correctly name them. And the twist that they add to this on top of strange horticulture is there's this extra bit of sensory, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a sensory wheel that you can click to further investigate the item, whether or not, like by touch, does it feel cold or hot? What do you
Mm.
see?
Okay.
What textures
Crypt
are
Master
there?
core.
Yeah,
Okay.
like what does it smell like? And so those additional sensory clues are what's going to help you identify what the item is. There were some that were actually quite tough. I felt like there were some that took me a little bit in the demo, and I think they had this in the first one. It's been a while, but if you give incorrect items or non-optimal items, if you guess incorrectly what a thing is, there is like a sanity meter that goes through, and I didn't reach the end of it, so I don't know what happens if you fail, but there is a sanity meter.
I love
I feel
it.
like
Um,
sanity meters are getting so popular in
Mhm.
games
yeah,
lately.
they're
So
they're
hot
kind
right
of
now.
like making a renaissance. Um, I don't know. I love it. It takes place in the same city as the first game, so you get
Yay.
the little like, oh, hey, here's another shop that deals in plants that you get to go visit. And you're like, oh my god, I know this. So that's just really fun. I think if you like the first one, you're gonna love this one. That's pretty much the gist of
Yay.
it.
That's what I was praying for. I'm so
Yeah.
excited for Strange Antiquities. Like when I heard that this was coming out, which hopefully us talking about it now is going to put it on more people's radar because I do think it's one of
Yeah.
those with a lot of indie like sequels, I do think there's like the struggle of like being a sequel where it's like, well, it's more the same. Like I don't know, there's kind of this negative weight to it and also just like a not like the marketing ends up not always like hitting its audience even when the audience is already like, "Yep, I like the first one. I would like
Mhm.
more." Like there are still people that don't know Toem 2 is a thing.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah." So I'm excited. I'm happy that you've enjoyed the demo time so far
Mhm.
because I was like, "Please don't say I played the first one and this one, I don't know, man." I'm like, "Please."
Yeah, that would
Cuz
have
like the
destroyed me a little bit.
when I heard this was coming out, I was like, "Yeah," cuz I think Strange Horticulture is like it is like one of my favorite games that I've like kind of played in recent years, even though, again, it's not like I'm
Mhm.
rating it a masterpiece, but I think it's so strong. It's such a vibe.
Mhm.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I think they're taking the stuff that really worked. They aren't messing with that too much, which I am happy about. And then they're adding on top of it additional layers of complexity that I think are going to be really fun. So yeah, I'm super excited.
I'm excited to smell the books and
I
lick
know.
the
Yeah.
pages or whatever. I
Yeah.
don't know.
This literally takes me back because I did do a lot of this when I was in museums, like in my
Smelling the
early
books and licking the pages.
smelling the
Mhm.
books and looking the pages, very professional stuff. Like going through the kind of catalogs. One of my favorite things to do is go through the catalogs with your little white gloves and like looking at the like actual
Mhm.
like someone was holding this 100 years ago and it's wild sort of thing. And I'm
Oh my god, I'd be
really
so scared,
excited to
Jill. I
see
would
that.
end up accidentally ripping it in half and then crying.
The intrusive thoughts just take
Put
over and
my
you're just
coffee
like
cup, like I put it down and it leaves like a ring on some kind of artifact. Like
Um, and then let's see, the other demo that I tried before I get into like the main game that I played this past week was Mushroom Masumi, which is so cute. This is like a very under the radar game, I feel like, and I would love for more people to know about it and to play it. It is a narrative game, feels very much like a choose your own adventure meets a little like a light sprinkle of sort of D&D like dice rolling chance on some of your choices, and the whole thing is you are a recluse alone in the woods. You want a child. A witch of the woods gives you a seed and it grows into a mushroom daughter, and you raise the mushroom daughter, and the choices that you make as the recluse impact how your daughter gets raised. And then the game switches, and you actually can also take on the perspective of the daughter as she makes her way out into the world, and the choices you make further impact your development. And the goal of the game is to just go through these stories, like choose your own adventure style, see the different mushroom daughters you can collect, and like what choices and how they impact your characters, and it's just so charming, so fun, really simple. But has a lot of detail and just like love for this kind of dark fairy tale that just you feel it as you're reading it and experiencing it. The pixel art is really interesting because the scenes as you're going through look like they're photographs that have been made super low res. And so you have this almost like hyper realistic photography, but then the sprites themselves are more kind of a chibi anime look, which I appreciated the combination of the two styles.
Mhm.
And honestly, I haven't tried this on my Steam Deck yet. I had just played the demo, but then I bought it immediately after playing the demo. And it's the kind of game where I'm really hoping it works on the Steam Deck. And I want to do like a run a night where it's just like a nice little fairy tale story that I get to read myself before bed. So this is, yeah, super charming. It's by Mortally Moonstruck Games. It's just like a little self-published text-based RPG kind of thing. Very
I
cute.
I love hearing you talk about it, and when Jenny says things, like, they're instantly just a little more charming and a little more, like, lovely sounding, but, like, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing some, like, sicko,
Oh, no, there's
like,
some
imagery.
dark stuff. Like, you can do the whimsy side, but when I say fairy tale, there's, like, grim fairy tale in here. Like,
Gotcha.
you can feed your mushroom daughter blood, and she can maybe do a murder, you know, like, things like that. It gets kinda dark and twisty for sure, which
Okay,
I appreciate.
I love it.
And then the last indie that I played was Deltarune. I finished chapters 3 and 4, and oh my god, I just, like I would love to do well, actually, shout out to Geeks and Grounds, my other podcast game club. We're playing it for July because I'm just forcing everyone in the club to play it so I have people to talk with about it because it's so good. I really for folks who don't know what Deltarune is, I guess I'll rewind. It is a parallel game to Undertale, which is a critically acclaimed indie that is really most famous, I think, for the ability as a player that you get to choose the kind of path you would like to take with the characters, whether good and peaceful, or if you choose violence and murder. Deltarune takes a lot of the same characters and places them in this parallel universe. So it is not a direct sequel, but there are a lot of Easter eggs and lore bits where, if you're a fan of Undertale, you'll appreciate what you see there. And this game also deals with ideas of agency, freedom of will for the characters and for you as a player, grief and nostalgia. And for me, I think this is better than Undertale. I think Toby Fox has really sunk into and like really absorbed I don't know what. I don't know. He's eating something good for breakfast every day because this is just like a masterpiece, I think. And I know it's not done yet. We have 3 chapters still to go. Only chapters 1 through 4 are out. But I think this could be one of those like classics that once it's done, it's probably going to be an essential kind of game to play. Um, it's a little bit hard for me to talk about, honestly, because it's just there are so many layers to the experience. I will say mechanically, it plays like I guess there's combat, and in that combat, it is turn based with bullet hell elements where you have a box. You usually place some sort of icon, like a heart, and you have to dodge the projectiles within that box. So that is the mechanical component to the game. And that's probably the biggest deterrent for most folks, I would say, is if you do not like that kind of bullet hell, there isn't really a difficulty adjustment that you can make, which is unfortunate. Um, but story wise, the characters are endearing. The game gets just if you love rabbit holes, I was actually saying earlier, this is like the Severance of games for me,
Mhm.
where with each chapter, the stuff that gets dropped content wise, the lore at the end of every chapter, I'm just like, oh my God, like what am I theorizing next? What's going to happen? And at the end of chapter 4, I immediately went online and like went to the forums and started reading and started watching the
Mhm.
YouTube essays because it's just that kind of game. So yeah, really good.
I really do love that kind of game. I feel like I want to jump in, but part of me really wants to wait until all of the like because I don't want to get burned.
Mhm.
I don't mind if it's like this is the like you talked about Severance, like the Netflix, like we're dropping an episode whenever or
Mhm.
this group of episodes, but like if a game has the potential not to finish, like what happens if I'm at
Yeah.
that
Oh.
cliff and it never like resolves? I will be so upset. So
Yeah,
I'm sort of on the fence about jumping into this, even though like every
that's
time
fair.
another drop happens, I'm like, oh, do I have to go check this out now? So yeah, I really wish Toby Fox could just say like all 7 chapters are done and they're getting dropped.
Me
But
too.
until that, I'm sort of like I'm afraid. I'm afraid for I'm everything. I'm afraid of everything.
That's understandable. Yeah, I think that's understandable. I've talked to a lot of people who are saying like they want to play it, but they're waiting because 3 more chapters is still a lot of content, and that's still potentially a lot of time because we had to wait, I think, almost 4 years for this drop after the first 2 chapters.
It's been a while,
But
yeah.
I think currently the projection is that the next chapter 5 is coming out next year. So I'm hoping that maybe something has happened in development where maybe they've locked like certain elements so that the rest of the chapters can be like a 1 a year cadence. That's my hope. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see. But yeah, that's understandable.
I'm also waiting for the full thing to be out. But I did actually play. I played like chapter 1 and 2. The first thing that came out was just 1 and 2, right? Like as a pair. I played that for. It was like one of the guides they did for IGN. It's also why I had to play Undertale right before, because one of the pages they wanted was references to Undertale. I never played Undertale, so then I sped through Undertale, and honestly, Undertale did not have a good setup for success for all of those reasons for me. But yeah, I find, despite it being still like the bullet hell stuff, I found Deltarune easier to play than Undertale, and maybe just because like I did the all of Undertale versus just like those 2 chapters of Deltarune. But I found I liked everything about Deltarune more than I liked Undertale. So it's interesting to hear from you, Jenny, someone who does vibe with Undertale, that you're kind of feeling like similarly like higher like levels of affinity for Deltarune. Yeah, so I'm excited. I definitely am still like maybe a little bit worried about like the bullet hell stuff, just because it's like not really my bag. But I feel like the construction of the bullet hell this time around feels less hell like it's less.
Yeah.
There's less projectiles on screen. Like I just can't do this ballet of weaving. I don't have the rhythm for it, and I feel like here it feels a little bit more doable than it has. I'm sure there'll be some wild like optional stuff, and there was like an optional boss in even just the chapter 1, chapter 2, where I'm like, straight up, I cannot do this. I had to like report. I was like still freelancing at the time. I'm like, Brendan, I can't do this. It's too hard. And he's like, oh, it's all right. And he probably, someone else did it and got my page up. I'm like, I can't fight.
Yeah.
God, this Chili's tonight. But yeah, it'll be cool once it's fully out. And seemingly is cool even without it being fully out. But I would just forget everything and have to replay it. So I figured I might as well just wait. That's my rationale.
Yeah. I think it's funny because this is a series that I really enjoy replaying, so I haven't minded the wait that much because I'll just replay it like consistently. I will agree and say that so far, I can't speak to obviously the later chapters, but I do think that Deltarune has an easier on ramp for that bullet hell mechanic, and is overall easier than Undertale for like the main game. There are each chapter has a secret boss, and like I haven't gotten into the secret bosses. I've watched them on YouTube. I don't know if I will play them personally, but they do have like for the sickos, for the bullet hell sickos and the super lore sickos, they have that like extra content that's really hard. But I would say the main game is more approachable for people, which is smarter, honestly, I think.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, I just want to point out this man right here who, if you're not watching, one Mike Towndrow has disrespected my doc by he has not joined us, but he has put down a game he's been playing, and it's not even an indie, and I don't think we can even argue that it is. Apparently Mike has put 29 hours into Pokemon Scarlet. So thanks, Mike. We hope you're feeling good. But I think we'll get his face off there so we don't have to look at it anymore.
8 really mean Pokemon jokes that I'm not gonna make about that damn game. God.
With that, that's the end of this week's council. Thank you to everyone who was here to actually join us and not talk about Pokemon.
Wow. Let me not miss an episode. Hold on.
Yeah. Oh no, dang it. There was something. Hold on. Someone vamp. Someone hold on.
Sure. I am excited to I want to get more into the demo scene. I mentioned that last episode. I've yet to succeed at that, but I did add the Mushroom Masumi game that you mentioned has a demo, so I put that into my library. Trying to taste test more, get more into the culture, not just wait for these keys and then I get the key and then I'm like, I'm busy, and then let me get more ahead of it and see what's going on in the demo scene. So excited to try to zip into that with some of my time in the next coming, the rest of my life, really, but just the next coming days and weeks.
Yeah, I'm so happy that most of the demos from the Steam Next Fest that I downloaded are up, and so I've been like slowly picking through the like remnants of Next Fest, which has been great.
Okay.
Oh, hey.
There we go. That
What
was
this
is
what are we looking at here?
According to content, one Mike Towndrow in a Pikachu suit off playing Pokemon Scarlet.
What year was
in a
this photo
Pikachu
taken?
onesie? Let's
It is,
not,
it
it's
is
not like
a
suit,
Pikachu
it's a
onesie. Let me see what the I've got so many. Hold on. I've got to open all of them now. Oh, this is a good one. Hold on. I know Mike has a whole background.
This has to be
see.
like a pretty
it says
old.
It's circa 2016, 2017 is what
Okay,
Mike
that seems
had
right.
said.
I'm like, I don't think. Mike. I was like, who is this? Whose man is this? I ain't never seen this man before.
Who's this human being? Hold on, we'll see a little bit. Share this tab. Oh, it's not big. It's not a big one. Hold on. There we go. That is maybe a little more Mike energy there.
This seems right. This is the kind of person that I would see outside of the GameStop for the midnight pre-order. This is the kind of crowd that's there. I'm not judging. I'm there in the line too, and I'm like, nice onesie. You know, I'm standing there with the community. But yeah, when I think neutral gamer, this is what I picture. Webster's Dictionary defines gamer as
gamer TM.
Okay, officially, that's the end of this week's council. Thank you to everyone for joining us, especially for joining us if you are watching, listening. We are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The Indie Council has its own socials at the Indie Council, basically everywhere, but check us out on Blue Sky. This session is closed. Go play some indies.